You're with CHRONOS. We don't just tell history, we take you there. There's a blade resting in a museum vault in Nara. The steel is 900 years old, forged in the year 950 CE, when the Kanto plain was ruled not by shoguns but by provincial lords whose names appear in no poems, whose faces were never painted. The sword's curve is subtle, almost tentative. The tang shows file marks that a later smith would have polished away. This is not the perfected katana of legend. This is something earlier, something still learning what it wants to become. The man who carried a blade like this did not call himself samurai. That word existed, it meant one who serves, but it carried no weight yet, no mythology, no code written in blood and ink. He called himself bushi, if he called himself anything at all. A man of war. A man who could ride and shoot and cut, who served a lord in exchange for rice and shelter, who trained every morning in the cold and did not expect monuments. Tonight, CHRONOS takes you to walk beside him. You will live one complete day in his world, 24 hours in a Japan that exists before the castles, before the tea masters, before bushido became a manual and the warrior became a philosopher. You will wake when he wakes, in a compound where frost clings to thatch and dawn arrives not with bells but with the scrape of sandaled feet on frozen ground. This is the year 950, Middle Heian period. The emperor sits in Kyoto behind lacquered screens, his edicts written on mulberry paper that may or may not reach the provinces. Here in the Kanto plain, power belongs to men who hold land, command horses, and enforce borders with arrows and blades. You are about to meet one of these warriors, a third son, 24 years old, whose future is his skill with a bow and nothing else. What did mornings feel like before honor became ceremony? What did training look like before every movement carried the weight of tradition? What did service mean before death in battle became the highest virtue? You're about to find out. CHRONOS will show you the practice ground at dawn, the smell of horse and hemp and wet iron, the sound of a bowstring in cold air, the taste of brown rice and winter radish, the ache in shoulders after 200 draws, the silence between men who train together and speak rarely. You will see weapons still evolving, armor that is function without ornament, disputes over water and boundaries, prayers that are brief and practical. This is not the Japan of falling cherry blossoms. This is frost and mud and young men learning to kill efficiently. This is rice taxes and provincial lords and a warrior class being born without yet knowing its own name. The sky is beginning to pale. Somewhere behind wooden walls, a man is waking. His name is Takemura no Satatoshi. He is nobody's legend. For the next 24 hours, you will see what he sees, hear what he hears, feel what his body feels. Let's begin where every warrior's day begins. Cold, dark, the body unwilling, the mind still half sleeping, and the practice ground waiting in the pre-dawn gray. The cold finds skin first. The barracks is wood and thatch, gaps between planks stuffed with dried grass that stops nothing. Takemura wakes to the sound of someone already moving, bare feet on wooden floor, the creak of a storage chest, hemp cloth rustling. He lies still. The sleeping mat beneath him is rice straw wrapped in coarse fabric. The floor beneath that is packed earth covered by wooden boards that have warped over years, letting cold rise through the gaps. His breath makes small clouds. Through the space where wall meets roof, he sees a strip of sky the color of charcoal, not black anymore but not yet gray. His shoulders ache. Yesterday was 200 bow draws, 50 with the training bow that weighs twice what a combat bow weighs, builds strength but punishes muscle. He rolls his neck. Small sounds of cartilage adjusting. Around him, other men wake without speaking. Morning is silent. Words come later, after tea, after the body remembers how to be awake. He sits up, rolls his mat, places it against the wall with the others, a neat line of rolled straw cylinders. From his wooden chest, his only private space in this room of 12 men, he takes practice clothes. Hemp tunic the color of old bark. Loose trousers tied at ankles with hemp cord. Short jacket with no dye, the natural gray-brown of unprocessed fiber. The fabric is stiff, slightly abrasive. It smells of wood smoke and sweat, smells that never leave cloth no matter how many times it's pounded on rocks in the stream. He slides feet into straw sandals. The weaving is tight, fresh. In 2 months they'll unravel and he'll weave new ones, sitting outside in evening light with the others, hands moving automatically while they talk about weather or horses or nothing. He stands, crosses to the door, slides it open. The track is smooth, worn by 10,000 openings. Cold air rushes in like water. He steps outside into air that stings the inside of his nose. The compound is dark except for one building, the main house, where smoke rises from the hearth, thin and gray, the overnight fire being fed. Frost clings to everything, thatch, fence posts, the short grass between buildings. His breath looks solid. His footsteps crunch. The sky is lightning, the kind of gradual pale that happens before the sun, when the world is all shades of gray and nothing has color yet. The practice ground is behind the main compound, past the stables where horses shift and breathe, their bodies making sounds against wood. The ground is earth-packed flat by decades of feet and hooves, hard as stone, smooth as worked leather. At the eastern edge, 10 straw targets mounted on wooden frames. At the western edge, a long rack holding practice weapons, wooden swords, blunted spears, bows of various weights. 2 men are already there. Kenzo, tall and loose-limbed, moves like water. Nohito, compact and low to the ground, built like a stone. They've trained together since boyhood. They acknowledge Takemura with the smallest nods. He nods back. They turn to face the targets. Takemura lifts his bow from where it leans against the weapon rack. It's as tall as he is, asymmetrical, the upper limb longer than the lower. The body is laminated bamboo and mulberry wood, 7 layers glued with fish paste and wrapped at stress points with rattan strips darkened by hand oil and years. The string is twisted hemp, waxed with animal fat, replaced every 3 months or when it shows fraying. Drawing this bow requires legs, back, shoulders, core, not just arm strength but structural integrity, the whole body working as architecture. His stance is familiar, carved into muscle by repetition. Feet shoulder width, weight forward slightly, knees soft. The quiver at his feet holds 20 arrows fletched with hawk feathers, each shaft inspected yesterday for straightness, for cracks, for warping. He selects one. The weight is known. He's shot this arrow 200 times. The target is 80 paces distant. In full light he could see individual pieces of straw. Now it's a shape darker than the air, a presence more than an image. He knocks. The bow rises. The draw is slow, deliberate, the string moving past his chest, past his jaw, until it touches his cheek and the arrow rests beside his right eye. His back and shoulders hold the tension. His legs root into ground. The release is not a decision but an allowing, tension becoming motion, the string snapping forward, the arrow hissing through cold air with a sound like tearing silk. It strikes low and left. He says nothing. No one says anything. He knocks another arrow. This time the draw is cleaner. The release smoother. The arrow hits closer to center. He continues. The rhythm empties thought. Knock, draw, anchor, release. String sound. Arrow hiss. Impact thud. 15 arrows. His shoulders burn. His breathing stays even. Kenzo and Naohito finish. They move to sword work. Takemura follows. Each takes a bakken, wooden practice sword, heavier than steel, designed to build muscle and prevent the sloppy habits that come from swinging light things. The wood is oak, the grain tight, the balance forward like a real blade but the weight distributed differently, punishing poor form. The drills are ancient, refined by men who survived. Overhead strike. Guard position. Diagonal cut from right shoulder. Guard. Thrust. Guard. High block. Low block. Step and cut. These are not the precise kata of later centuries, not formalized into philosophy. These are working movements tested in situations where mistakes meant opened bellies and severed arms. They pair off. Takemura faces Naohito. The bakken meet with sounds like drumbeats heard from far away. Breathing comes harder. Sweat forms despite cold. The mind empties. Only distance matters, timing, the weight of oak, the position of the other body moving through space. When the sun breaks the eastern treeline, they're breathing hard, clothes damp. They stop. Bow briefly, a nod of the head, not the formal bows of court. Walk to the well. The well is stone-lined, narrow, the water 20 feet down and cold enough to numb teeth. Naohito lowers the bucket, hauls up. They drink. Splash faces. Let shock reset everything. Steam rises from their skin into cold air. The compound is fully awake now. More smoke. Voices. Somewhere a wooden mallet strikes grain in rhythmic thuds. From the shrine near the eastern fence, incense smoke rises perfectly vertical in still air. They return to the barracks to change. Inside smells of men, straw, leather, wood, the particular sourness of sweat dried into fabric. No one has privacy. Sleeping mats rolled and stacked. Chests holding spare clothes, a few objects, carved figure, letter from family, good sharpening stone. Weapons on wall pegs. The only decoration is wood grain. Takemura changes into day clothes, similar to practice wear but less worn, the hemp slightly softer. He ties a narrow sash. No sword yet. He's not on duty. The sword stays wrapped in oiled cloth in the chest where rust cannot find it. Breakfast is in the main house. The outer room has packed earth floor. Inner rooms have raised wooden platforms. Heat comes from the central hearth where coals glow under ash. Smoke finds its way out through thatch, not cleanly, so the room always carries the smell of burning wood mixed with something else. Human presence, cooking time. Takemura sits with the warriors near the room's edge, separate from family members who sit closer to heat. The head of household hasn't appeared yet. His wife oversees everything, 46 years old, gray threading through black hair tied back simply, movements efficient and without waste, the economy of someone who has run a household for 20 years. The meal is what it always is. Brown rice, darker and coarser than the white polished rice eaten in Kyoto. Miso soup with daikon radish and dried kelp. Pickled vegetables, turnip, cucumber, radish, packed last autumn in salt and rice bran. A thumb-sized portion of dried fish, tough as leather, salty, meant to be nibbled to flavor rice not eaten whole. They eat with wooden chopsticks and wooden bowls. The rice is sticky, clumps together. The soup is hot enough to burn if you're careless. No one speaks. Breakfast is fuel. Conversation comes later, if at all. The head of household enters. Oba no Yoshitaka. 53 years old. Gray in his topknot. Face like carved wood, lined, weathered, the skin around his eyes permanently creased from squinting into sun and wind. He fought in the northern campaigns 20 years ago, against Emishire tribes that resisted imperial authority. He earned land grants and tax rights over 3 villages. By Kyoto standards he's provincial, minor. Here he is law, judge, commander, the man whose word determines whether rice gets planted or borders get enforced. He surveys the room with a gaze that assesses without announcing judgment. Speaks briefly with his steward, a thin man with a memory like an abacus, capable of holding numbers for harvests, tax obligations, debts owed and owing. There is a boundary dispute with the eastern neighbor. Provincial tax collectors arrive in 10 days. The south field needs drainage before the next rain or the crop will rot. His voice is level, factual. These are not proclamations. This is management, the daily logistics of keeping land productive and people functioning within their roles. After breakfast, assignments. Takemura is on eastern boundary patrol with Kenzo and Naohito. The boundary where the dispute simmers, where the neighboring lord claims his markers have been moved, where tension requires regular presence. They prepare horses in the stable. The smell is thick, manure, hay, horse sweat, leather oil, Takemura's mount is a brown mare, 14 hands, thick-necked, sturdy, with moods that range from cooperative to stubborn. They call her Chero, brown, because names here are descriptive not poetic. He saddles her, checking girth, stirrups, bit. The saddle is wood and leather, practical, designed for hours not elegance. He hangs a quiver from the saddle, checks his bow is secure. No sword for patrol. The bow is primary. A sword means the situation has already deteriorated. They ride out through the eastern gate. Morning is cold but bright. Sky is pale blue, cloudless, promising no rain. The track, calling it a road, is generous, runs through fields. Rice paddies drained for winter, stubble from last year's crops still visible. Farmers already working, bent over earth, preparing for spring planting. The farmers do not look up as warriors pass. The relationship is understood, structural, not personal. Farmers grow rice. Warriors protect land and enforce order. It is transaction, not friendship. The boundary is marked by stones too heavy for one person to move and wooden posts carved with ownership characters. They ride slowly, checking each marker. Ground is still winter hard. Grass sparse and brown. At the midpoint they encounter 3 riders from the neighboring clan. Both groups stop, horses facing each other across the invisible line. No hostility but no warmth. They exchange formal greetings. Brief, clipped information is shared. No trouble. No encroachment. Everything in order. The conversation lasts less than 5 minutes. They part, each group continuing opposite directions. This is the reality of being a warrior in this era. Most days are this. No combat. No tests of courage. Just riding lines, checking markers, being visible. Violence, when it comes, is brief and brutal and less frequent than stories suggest. They return by midday. Sun high, air warmer but still cool enough that breath shows in shade. Takemura unsaddles Chero, brushes her coat, checks hooves for stones lodged between iron shoe and frog, ensures water and millet measure. Horse care is priority. A warrior without a mount is liability. Lunch is rice and pickles, eaten quickly in the barracks. Then weapons maintenance. Takemura retrieves his sword from the chest where it lives wrapped in cloth soaked with camellia oil. The blade is a tachi, curved, worn edge down suspended from belt. It is not yet the refined katana of later centuries. The curve is less pronounced. The blade slightly wider. The construction simpler, folded steel but fewer folds, less refinement. He unwraps carefully. The blade is clean, he cleaned it 3 days ago, but he inspects anyway because rust is death and moisture is death and diligence is survival. He wipes with soft cloth, checking for discoloration, for nicks in the edge. The blade was forged by a smith 2 provinces west, a man who learned from his father who learned from a Korean smith who settled 40 years ago. The techniques are still evolving, still borrowing, still becoming what they will be. Other men do the same. Kenzo sharpens a spear blade on a whetstone, the sound rhythmic and almost meditative, metal on stone, scrape and pause, scrape and pause. Naohito checks his armor, a lamellar vest of small iron plates laced with leather cord. The armor is functional, plain. No decoration. No family crest. That comes later, when warriors become hereditary class with identities to display. An older warrior is repairing a bow, replacing damaged rattan binding. His hands are gnarled, fingers thick and strong. He fought in the campaigns. He has killed men. He does not discuss it. His hands work without his eyes watching, muscle memory guiding movements perfected through decades. Afternoon is interrupted by summons. Oba wants Takemura and others in the main house. A messenger has arrived from the provincial governor, young man, exhausted, clothes dusty from hard riding. There's a dispute between 2 villages westward. Water rights. A stream feeding rice paddies shifted course after heavy rain. Both villages claim the new land. Words exchanged. Tools raised. Situation escalating. The governor requests Oba send warriors to mediate and enforce resolution if necessary. This is warrior work too. Not only fighting but enforcing order, extending administration that is distant and abstract. Kyoto is far. Imperial authority is theoretical. Real power is local, held by men like Oba with land and warriors and will to use both. Discussion is pragmatic. How many men? Who leads? What authority they carry? Oba listens, asks questions, decides. Takemura is not chosen. Too young, too inexperienced in negotiation. Task goes to Mitsuhira, older warrior who has mediated before, knows how to speak with farmers, when to threaten and when to concede. Meeting ends. Takemura returns to barracks. Afternoon is quiet. Some men gamble with bone dice. Others nap. Takemura sits outside on a wooden bench, repairing torn armor strap. Leather is stiff, resistant. Needle is thick, thread is wax temp. Work is slow, methodical, the kind of task where mind can wander while hands stay busy. He thinks about his family. His father, a minor landholder 2 provinces south with 3 sons and insufficient land to support them all. That's why Takemura is here, serving Oba, earning rice and shelter and possibility of future that wouldn't exist at home. He thinks about the boundary patrol, the neighboring warriors, the formal exchange of information. He thinks about the sword in the chest, the blade he inspected this afternoon, the edge capable of cutting through bone. He does not think about honor or destiny. Those concepts are forming but not yet solid, not yet structured into the rigid philosophy they will become. He thinks about tomorrow's training, about whether the Western dispute will require his presence, about autumn's rice harvest and whether it will be sufficient. Practical thoughts. Present thoughts. The thoughts of a man doing a job. Evening comes gradual. Sky turns amber then gray. Takemura walks to the shrine for evening observance. The shrine is small, wooden structure no larger than storage shed, open on one side, housing bronze mirror wrapped in white cloth and offerings of rice and sake in ceramic vessels that are chipped and old and never replaced because age is holiness. He bows twice. Claps twice. Bows again. The ritual is brief. There's no priest, he visits monthly from the temple 5 kilometers away. Daily observance is simple presence, acknowledgement of kami, the spirits of land and ancestors. Takemura offers no specific prayer, makes no request. This is not negotiation with divine. This is respect, continuity, the maintenance of relationship between human and other. Buddhism is also present but less dominant here than in the capital. There's a temple nearby, single wooden hall where a monk chants sutras and performs funeral rites. Some warriors are devout, seeking mental clarity and discipline the teachings offer. Others, like Takemura, participate without intensity. Spirituality is practical, another layer of protection, another way to maintain order in a world that feels unstable at its edges. Dinner is communal, similar to breakfast. Rice, miso soup, pickled vegetables. Tonight there's fish, dried mackerel, salty and strong, the kind of flavor that needs rice to balance it. Conversations are quiet, tired. The day's work is finished. Night is for rest and small rituals before sleep. After dinner, some men gather outside around a fire pit. Flames are small, more for light than warmth though air is cooling fast. They talk in low voices. Complaints about minor injuries, twisted ankle from a fall during mounted training, bruised shoulder from taking a bakken strike wrong. Speculation about the Western dispute, whether it will escalate into something requiring drawn weapons. Mitsuhira, the older warrior chosen to mediate, tells a story about a skirmish 10 years ago. Bandits in the mountains. 3 dead, several wounded, the bandits scattered but never fully eliminated, still out there somewhere living in caves and preying on travelers. He describes it without drama, chaotic, terrifying, over in minutes, decided by who fell first not who was more skilled. The younger men listen. Knowledge transfers this way, not through manuals but through stories, through accumulated experience of men who survived and remember. Eventually fire burns low. Men drift back to barracks. The room is dark except for one oil lamp, flames small and steady. Warriors prepare for sleep, removing outer garments, rolling out mats. Conversations fade to murmurs then silence. Takemura lies down. Mat is thin. Floor is hard beneath. He hears the compound settling, footsteps, door sliding shut, distant dog barking, wind moving through thatch above. His body aches in familiar ways, shoulders, lower back, thighs. The ache of training, of riding, of being 24 and strong and worked hard every day. He thinks briefly about patrol, about boundary markers, about neighboring warriors. He thinks about the sword wrapped in oiled cloth, blade that could open a man from shoulder to hip if swung correctly. He thinks about his father, about insufficient land, about being a 3rd son with no inheritance except skill. He does not wonder about his place in history. He does not consider whether his life has meaning beyond itself. These are not his questions. His questions are immediate. Will tomorrow be cold, Will the Western dispute require travel? Will the harvest be sufficient? Will his Lord continue to value his service? Practical questions. The questions of a man living inside his life, not observing it from outside. He falls asleep as what he is, a skilled man doing skilled work, serving a Lord in exchange for rice and shelter and the possibility of a future slightly better than his father's past. The myth will come later, built on the bones of men like him who did not know they were building anything except a life that functioned day by day. There's a blade in a vault in Nara. You understand it differently now. Not as artifact, not as relic, but as tool carried by a man whose name is not recorded, whose deeds are not celebrated, whose life was ordinary in the most profound sense. He woke in cold, trained until shoulders burned, rode boundaries, maintained weapons, ate brown rice and pickled radish, prayed briefly, sat with men around fire, slept on thin mat on hard floor, did this again the next day, and the next, until the pattern of days became a life. He was not samurai in the way the word later means. He was bushi, man of war, in an era when the role was still being defined through daily choices, not inherited philosophy. He did not follow bushido. It did not exist. He did not serve shogun. There was none. He did not live by code because the code was still being written by men like him, through accumulated decisions about when to draw and when to sheath, when to speak and when to stay silent. Every morning he trained. Every day he served. Every night he prepared for violence that might come or might not. In those repetitions, bow drawn, blade sharpened, boundary ridden, something was being built without anyone noticing. Not a monument. A foundation. The Japan you imagine, castles on hilltops, tea masters, flower arrangers, warriors writing poetry before battles, the elaborate ceremony of death, is still centuries away. What you saw today is what came before all that. Cold mornings, hard ground, brown rice, boundary disputes, weapons that need constant care, horses that need feeding, lords who need serving. The practical, daily, unglamorous work of maintaining order in a world where power is local and violence is tool like any other. Honor was simpler then. Keep your word. Serve your Lord. Do not shame your family. The rest, the philosophy, the aesthetics, the spiritualized violence, comes later, constructed by men who have the luxury of peace and the need to justify their existence with something more elevated than we are good at organized violence and someone must do it. The warriors you walked among had no such luxury. They were practical men doing practical work. They were foundation. The myth was built on them. But they were not the myth. This is where samurai begins. Not with code but with cold mornings. Not with philosophy but with repetition. Not with legend but with men whose names will be forgotten and whose work will be remembered by people who never knew they existed. Dawn comes again tomorrow. Practice ground will be cold. Bow will be drawn. Blade will be sharpened. Boundaries will be ridden. The warriors, though they do not yet carry the name that will make them famous, will continue becoming what they are meant to be. Not because they dream of greatness. Because they wake up and do the work. The thread endures. The pattern repeats. The foundation holds. This is CHRONOS. We don't just tell history, we take you there.